Hello, my name is Rainer Hanekamp. I'm a trainer and consultant at Angular Architects, and in this video I want to show you how to migrate an existing Angular application from version 13 to 14, including of course the migration to typed forms, standalone components and APIs, and also how to set the page title in the routing. And of course I will explain what all these new features are all about and why you want to use them. Let's start. So I have here my application that I use for all my examples, and well, it's a very easy one, a very simple one. I have here a menu which says holidays. It lists me some cities that I can visit, and I also have another component which contains a sign up form with some more fields. And by the way, in the holidays area you also have here a get brochure button. If you click on that, you are navigated to a component which has actually a very simple form. Let's go to our code. So we see here now the common structure of an Angular application. We have our app module. We are using Angular Material, obviously. I also use NGRX using the German locals. And we also see here that the holidays module, that's the one which is lazily loaded. So we have here the routing configuration, also NGRX, some dependencies for the components, and well, some other stuff that you usually find in an application. I have a side menu, of course the header component, and there is also a directive. It's a blinker directive, that's the name of it. And also some things about authentication, so a user can obviously sign in, of course also sign up. So this is also part of this application. And now I'm going to migrate to Angular 14. This is obviously Angular 13. And the first step that you have to do is that you have to run ng update like this. And you have to update the Angular core and the Angular CLI first. Okay, that can take some time. Of course, Angular is now updating the new dependencies, so we can take a look into our package.json, and there we see already Angular animations, Angular commons, so all the common libraries, the normal Angular libraries, they are already migrated to Angular to version 14. What is also happening, or what has already happened, is that the migration scripts run. And as you might know, that Angular 14 comes with standalone components and typed forms. And what the migration script will do, that it will not change your application, your components to standalone ones, because they are a developer preview, so you have to do that manually, which is something we will do afterwards. And when it comes to typed forms, that's not a developer preview, that's fully available, but the update script makes sure that it doesn't break anything. And it can be the case that when it would switch to typed forms, that some parts of your application just fails to compile. And that's the reason why it plays very safe, and it more or less transforms all your form group, form builder, form controls to untyped versions. So this untyped versions, that means that the form group are still untyped, obviously, and it just works as it did before. And we have already two components where I'm using form. That's the sign up component and the request info component. And there have already been changes to these classes. So if I take a look at my Git status, then you see here that of course the Angular.json package files have been updated, also the tsconfig, which has switched to ECMAScript 2020, but we see the request info component and the sign up component as well. So let's go to the request info component first. What has changed? Well, we see here is an untyped form builder and an untyped form group. These are the new types. And if I go hover over the value with my mouse, then you see that this value is still an any type. So this is what I said, it still works as it did before. There was no change, it's untyped forms. And if I want to migrate now to typed forms, everything that I have to do is that I have to reuse the old classes. So instead of using the untyped form builder, I'm using the typed form builder, which is more or less just the form builder itself. So I'm going to show you what this means. So just form builder, and I do the same for the form group here as well. And that should do it. Let me quickly import them. All right, so I'm going back, I check the value and I see it's still an any. Why that? Well, the reason is that actually we don't really have to do anything special when it comes to type forms. We only need to use the types, but there are some things you have to take care of. First of all, you see here that I'm using the form builder and I'm declaring here the form group variable, just this form group. This is not good. I should just get rid of it because I don't want to provide any type. I just want that TypeScript infers the type by the way I am configuring my form group in this case. It's still any, but what of course what TypeScript needs to know if it should infer the types here, it needs to know what type of address or what type the address property here has, and it doesn't know it because I didn't provide a default or an initial value, and this is missing here. So when I say, well, it's an empty string, then TypeScript knows, oh yes, so address is obviously a string, and then of course the value of the form group, if I go back, now knows, okay, this value has one address, that's right, it's of type string, but we see that there are also other types like the null or the undefined. The question of course is now, where does this come from? I mean, it's clearly a string, why is it null or why is it undefined? And the explanation goes like this. By default, when you are running reset on a particular form control, then by default the value changes to null, regardless what you used as initial value. So regardless of what you used here in this array here. This is where the null comes from. And the undefined comes from the fact that when you say you want to disable a form control, and if you do that, then the value is not null, because the form control is not available anymore, and that's why it is undefined. So in this case, by default, all your form controls will have your actual type, in this case string, but also null and undefined. And there is an option, a possibility, how we can get rid of the null type here. And we can do this by using a special form builder, where we say, yes, I want to use the non-nullable form builder. And let me quickly change that. So I say non-nullable form builder. And what changes now is that Angular says, okay, if you now reset your form control, the address form control, and I will not set it to null anymore, but I will set it to the empty string. That's the initial value that you have defined here. Of course, I can more or less do the same thing when I'm not using the form builder. I have the form control. Here again, with the form control, you need to provide a default value. So this should also not be a real problem, because again, TypeScript can infer the right type. And if I scroll now again back to my value or to the address property here, then we see, okay, the address property is only a string or an undefined, and obviously we need to get rid of this undefined now, because the lookup method needs a string. And I mean, this is nothing new, I would say. I mean, since Angular 12 we have already the strict mode, so we know already that quite a lot of properties can be undefined, and we know how to deal with them. And so what I usually do is that I say, okay, if it really could be undefined, then I want to make a particular check for that. So I say here, if this form group if the value address, if that one is undefined, then I just go to throw an error. So I throw new error, address is undefined, and if I do that, then TypeScript again infers, yes, at this stage the address cannot be undefined anymore because he just threw an error, and that's why address in this case is a string, and that's it. Okay, this solves the very simple form, and now let's switch over to the sign up component, which contains some more fields. For the sign up component, again, same story as before. We have here the untyped form builder. I say, well, I want to use the nullable form builder. And, well, do I have to change anything? I mean, it looks good. First name, last name, they all have initial values. We see here also that it's not just about the string. We also have a number. We also have a Boolean. Actually, we could just take a look how these properties would look like. So when we go to our form group, I could say, well, I want to see the controls. I want to see if you really can infer all the values. And well, yeah, it's email terms, so all the properties are there. I can of course also go to the value itself. And here again, the properties are there and with the same types as we have seen before, namely it's in this case it's a string or it's an undefined. The null has just been removed. We have here a very special case, and that's the birthday. If you see the birthday in my case, I set it to null. Default value is null. This means that due to type inference, the birthday, the type, is also null or undefined. So how does this work together? Because I said I want to use a non-nullable form builder. Now I have a null. Why? The reason is quite clear. Non-nullable form builder just means that on reset it is not set to null. But if I say, well, the default, the actual type is a null, of course, then it must be a null, and that's why we have here the null. Obviously, but this is obviously not what I want. I want that this is a date. It could be null, yes, that's right, but it should also be a date. In this case, type inference doesn't work, but we can do something else. We can use here a form control that contains the real type. So the way I would do this is that I say new form control. Of course, null, that's the default one. In my case, the initial value. Now I have to say it can be a date, or of course it can also be a null. If you want to provide a date, I mean, if you want to say yes, it always should be a date, then you can also say here new date, something like this. Then you can get rid of this type here as well. But if you then want to say, I mean, this is more or less the case for when you are not using the form builder, just form control and form groups itself, you have now also another option, a second argument, where you can say non-nullable, it would be false or true. And in this way, again, if you're not using the form builder, this would be the way how you would do it. Then you can set here the non-nullable as well. But in my case, I leave it as I had it before. I really want that the birthday could be null, or is null actually, when I am initializing this form. So this should stay like this. And if I now check the type of birthday, then I see yes, it's date, null, or undefined. One last thing about this undefined. Can we see this somehow? Well, yes, we can. As I said before, the only thing that we need to do, we need to disable the form. And in that regard, I can actually provide a button for the birthday control here. And I can say, or I can provide the option to my users, well, if you don't want to tell me your birthday, then of course you can disable this field as well. And well, then I don't know when your birthday is. So the way how I would do it is, I go into my template, just a normal task. I say here, I have here a button, I say disable, and then I just say on the click event, I use an inline function in this case. So I say I go to my form group, controls, birthday, and I say please disable it for me. Okay, and now let's switch over to the application. So we see the application is still running. That's a good sign. So this means the migration to type forms was more or less successful. So I go back to sign up. And what I wanted to show you was the birthday. So if you remember, I have added here a button, disable. Oh, you can't really see it. So let's fix that. I say this should be a matte raised button like this. Should be nicer now. Yes, okay, now it's a little bit better. So if I now before I click on disable, please take a look what will happen with this birthday property here. This is a JSON formatted version of our form group's value. If I click on disable, we see that the birthday goes away, and that's why it is now undefined. And since we are already on this component, I can show you also the other way when we are using the normal form builder instead of the non-nullable form builder, how it would look like this. Going back to my code, and I reduce the normal form builder, update import, again check the values, first name, last name, they're all strings, holidays per year is a number, terms is a boolean, and now I click on reset, and now they are all null. This is what the form builder does. And now the other way around, and then we are done with the typed forms. Again, now the non-nullable form builder, I click on disable, they all keep their strings, they all keep their default, their initial value. Okay, this was it about the non-nullable or about the type forms. And the next step that we are going to do is that we're using the page title property, which is also a new addition in Angular 14. In order to use the new page title, it's a very easy task. You can go back to I can go back to my code. I go to my app routings, where I have the configuration. Well, and everything that I have to do is that in the routing configuration, I just need to say I want to have a title here. So I say for the home component, it is home. For sign up, it is, I don't know, well, sign up. And I can do the same thing with my lazy loaded holidays module. So I can say here, well, for the holidays, it's obviously holidays. And for the request info component, it's request brochure. That's it, not so hard. And we see already, if you look here at the tab title, it says sign up. If I click on home, it says home. If I click on holiday, it changes to holidays, and so on and so forth. So this is more or less the page title. And the next thing will be the standalone components. Okay, standalone components. Why do we need them? Why do we want them? Well, we actually don't need them, but we want them. The standalone components, they will make ng modules optional. So this means that we can get rid of the ng modules. This doesn't mean that our components know automatically what dependencies they have, but we need to move the imports from the ng module to the component, and then the component just runs without ng modules. The other thing that we have to do is that we have to add the standalone property to the components declaration, and then this also works. Standalone components also apply to standalone directives, standalone pipes. So these are more or less the three visual elements that we have. You need to be aware that there might be quite a lot of work in front of you when you want to do the migration. There are some community libraries, tools that help you already a little bit. Angular also said that they are working on some official schematics, helper tools, but nevertheless, you will have to invest some time for this migration. And to make it as easy as possible, you want to do it in 2 different steps, in 2 different phases. In the first phase, you are preparing your existing components for the actual migration, and the second one is, of course, the actual migration. What do I mean by preparation? By preparation, I mean that you should apply the scheme pattern. Let me show you what I mean. So in my case, I have here the holidays component, holidays module, sorry, and the holidays module declares 3 different components. The problem now is that the imports that we see here, they apply to the 3 components, but we don't really know which one of these components, for example, requires the mat form field module and which ones don't require it. And if you want to go to standalone components, then you need to know very specifically what dependencies every particular component has, because you only want to import the things that are really required. In order to make the transition easy, you can apply a scheme pattern, which means you have to create 1 ng module per component. This is the first phase. And I can do this now. So I go to my declaration and I say I want to pick more or less that component that is more or less a leaf in terms of the component tree, so which is more or less the last element, the one that doesn't contain any further components, directives or pipes. In my case, this would be the holiday card component and also the request info component. So both are more or less at the end of our component tree. I want to start with the request info component. So I go into it and I scroll to the bottom, and here I just say, oh, that's not the bottom, here we are. And then I just generate a new class, which is called request info component module, and this will be the module for my component. I say request info component module, it's an ng module, of course. And what does it do? Well, it declares but also exports the request info component. And we also need the imports, of course. Right. I need to get rid of it from the holidays module so that I don't declare it twice, like this. And then it depends which IDE you use. If you use a good one, like I have here IntelliJ, then your IDE will help you. So in my case, I can open the template, and you see already IntelliJ tells me, look, there are some things you're missing or that your ng module is missing. So it detected that I have now created a new ng module. And it says, well, the form group is obviously missing, so this means you need to import the reactive forms module. Should I do that for you? Yes, please do that. So I save it, I can go back, scroll down, and we see already here that this module is imported. And in that way, I'll just continue. Don't forget about the common module, that's also required. Right. And now I think I have all of them. Of course, we are not done yet. What we are missing, if we go back to our holidays module, the one that contains the routing, well, you would have to import the request info component module here as well. So this one's missing. Request info component module. And then let's check if our application, especially if the request info component is still working. Yes, looks good. So all the dependencies are there. We see the material button, we see the icon. The input also looks nice. Good, very good job, I would say. And then the next step, I mean, you would just continue like this with all the other components. And I want to show you a special case, because here in my holiday card component, if I open it, you see that I am using here something which is called the eternal blinker. So it's not really the last element of the componentry, because it is also using other directives. At the moment, this directive is still part of a particular module. So what I would recommend, that if you have, or if you find yourself in such a situation, that you find the module which is responsible for this directive and migrate that one first to SCAM. It will make it easier. So I go to my blinker directive, and well, that looks good. So it looks like we have only a shared module which only contains the blinker directive. What a surprise. And so what I can do now actually is that I just rename that one, or I don't even have to rename it. I just cut it out and create an inline module out of it. And of course, I want to call this the blinker directive module, like this. And I can remove the shared module. That one is not required. Of course, I have to expect now some compilation errors, but this is something where I'm sure I can fix quite easily. Yeah, so there we still have the shared module, the reference. So I say now it is called the blinker directive module. Selector still stays the same, so I'm not expecting that I have to change anything further. Let's take a check. Yes, looks good. Okay, back to our holidays card component. I'm now creating another inline module. So I say export class holiday card component module, like this. Of course, I have to remove it from the holidays module. And now I go into the HTML, into the template. IntelliJ again helps me. Well, now we are at the eternal blinker. And since this is already an inline or a SCAM for this directive as well, I don't have any issues there. Well, and this is more or less the module now. And as I did, I just work now my path towards up the component tree and migrate one component after the other. Again, this will be a lot of work, but it is definitely worth it. Okay, so I'm done now with the migration. Everything of the holidays module got more or less got migrated to SCAM. I also did the app module. So the app module has now something which is actually called app component module. And this is a module which only is responsible for the dependencies of the app component. If we take a look at it, we see that the side menu is there, the header is there. Router module is also required because I'm using the router link in the template. The question, of course, now, why do we have to come up with an app component module when we have already the app module? Well, there is a small difference, because the app module itself is responsible for the complete application, whereas the app component module is just the module for this component. So the app module contains all the providers, the global providers. It of course also imports all the modules that are providing other services in the global scope, in the root scope. And as you see here, we have also the security module still. So the security module is also required because it's there for NGRX and also for the authentication module. And the other one is obviously the holidays module, but this is the one that I have already shown you before. The last thing you need to do, of course, is that you need to check if your application is still running. So I click on holidays, that works. Get the brochure also works. I click on sign up, that is also working. Wonderful. So the SCAM migration is now complete, and now I can continue with the standalone components. So standalone components again is something you want to have because it will reduce your code size significantly. This is one reason why you want them. The other reason is that it will make it easier for newcomers to understand the model, the rules of the Angular framework itself. You don't need them, you are not forced to use them. As I said before, it's still a developer preview, and the migration script will not activate them. Actually, if you are using the Angular CLI just to generate a new component, then you also don't get standalone components. So let's say I just say ng generate, I want to generate a new component which is called hello in Angular 14, obviously. Then the hello component is a normal module, and you see here also that the app module also got updated as it used to be. And well, if I want to have a standalone component, then I need to add the standalone flag in the generate command. So first of all, I'm going to delete the hello. I'm not going to need it. Same is true for my app module. Where is it? Here we have it. Get rid of it. And then I'm rerunning the command again, and I say, well, but this time I want to have it as a standalone. And you will see now that it is not necessary anymore to declare it inside of the app module, because it's just a standalone component. It just runs alone. And well, we have it. We have it here, and this is how it looks like. Standalone true, imports, common module, and of course if I want to add others, then I just need to add here my modules. Well, the question is now, what can I do if I want to migrate my existing ones? That's not that hard. You just need to add the standalone true and the imports. And now it is very extremely helpful that we did this scheme migration before. So I go back to my request info component, and everything that I have to do, and this applies for all other components as well, also directives and pipes, you have to add standalone, true, and then you just copy the imports, move it upwards here, and you just delete the ng module. It's not required anymore. I do the same thing for my holiday cards component. So I go here, I say, okay, these are already the imports. I say standalone is true. I want to import them. Don't need this anymore. And the question, of course, now is how can this work? I mean, it works, but do I have to do anything else? Yes, because if you remember, these modules that I have just deleted, they are imported in the holidays module. So if I go to my holidays module, we should see that the import paths are now wrong. So it says that I cannot find the request info component module. I can also not find the holidays component is still there, but in this case I'm just importing the request info component module. But what I can do now instead, since this is a standalone component, I just import the standalone component like this. And this means, I mean, IntelliJ is complaining because it doesn't know about standalone components yet. I'm sure this will change quite soon. But in this case, this means that this component, the standalone components, acts as a normal ng module for in the context, of course, of an ng module case that we have here. And I can, of course, also use now a standalone components in another standalone component. We have this use case if you think of the rig of the holiday card, which is using this blinker directive. So I switch over to this blinker directive here. It doesn't contain any imports, so I can just get rid of it. And I just say, well, it is also standalone true. Now I go to my holiday card component because there it's required. And well, here it says, yes, this is the blinker directive module, but since it's now standalone, I just remove it like this, import the blinker directive, and now it's working. We aren't done yet. If you remember, there was something with the holidays card, with the holidays component. So if I go to my holidays component, you'll see that at the very bottom, it still imports the module here. So I'm going to remove that one as well. And now it should actually work. So let's check this. Holidays, get the brochure, everything works. I mean, the cancel does not work, but that didn't work before either. So that's good. And I mean, I will now continue with the migration of the rest. I will stop at the app component because this is a little bit special. But you see that this is something that you can do. You can have a mix between standalone components and the old ones. Your application is still running, and this allows you a very smooth migration. So what I would recommend you is that you maybe don't want to do a big bang migration, that you just pick a set of components, maybe a set that belongs to the same ng module, and then you migrate all of them at once. And then when you have time, you start with the rest. Okay, and I will continue now to migrate all my other components as well. Okay, so I'm done with the migration. I'm now fully on standalone components. And if you remember, there is one thing that I said, there is something very special about the app component. That's not really true. It's more about the app module and the relationship between these two. Because the app module is a very special module. I mean, we still have here an ng module there, and there are some types of modules that we will have to keep for some time. App module is something that we can migrate, but it is a module that you see it's very important. We also have other module types like the HTTP client module that are there to provide services. We need to find a way how to deal with them. We also have modules that have this for root, or like also the router module does it have, but we have some modules that need this for root in order to come up with some kind of configuration. So these are the module with providers, of course. And well, obviously the Angular team says, yeah, if you want to get rid of the ng modules, then we also need to come up with a solution for these use cases here. And there is one particular use case or a solution for the way how we can get rid of the app module. And this comes in the form of a new function, which is called bootstrap application. So we can replace the complete app module with one particular function. And in order to do that, I need to go to the main TS, and I just remove this line. So the app module is not bootstrapped anymore. And instead of that, I say bootstrap application. That's the new function if I'm able to write it right. The bootstrap application wants from me the app component, obviously. So I say, yes, I have one. This is the app component. And then there are some options. And these options, they fulfill now more or less the same task that the app module has done. Namely, they are providing the required services. What we don't need to add here is the browser module that's implicitly there. The options, they have a providers property, like this. And what I have to do now, well, very easy. I just go to my app module and I'm moving all my providers from there to here. So I app module, say, well, here they are, like this. First step. Second step, we are not done yet because you see, obviously there are some other modules, quite a lot of them, that we still require. And for them, we cannot just import it somewhere, but there is now a very special and additional function that can help us. And this function is called, I never can remember it, it's called import providers from. Import providers from, like this. And here I can add all my ng modules, all my existing ng modules that I still require. So this would mean the browser module is not required. The browser animations module, the app routing kind module, yes. The toolbar, the button and the side nav module, they are not required. They are already used in the app component, so the app component takes care of them. So I'm just copying the first bunch. And security module, store module, effects module, yes, all of them are providing services. They belong here as well. And what about the sign up component? Well, the sign up component is a very special component because it's part actually of my app routing module, more or less. I can show you what I mean. So inside of my app routing module, I have here the sign up component declared. And of course, the question is now, what should I do with it? In fact, I can actually remove it. I don't need to move it to my Bootstrap application. It will just be picked up. Okay, and this is hopefully it. So I can now go back to my application. I reload it. Oh, we see it's still working. Click on holidays, sign up, everything's there. And now the last test, I'm going to remove the app module itself. And to be 100% sure, I'm going to restart the Angular CLI. That looks good. So it looks like that one is still working. Sign up, everything's there, right? What about the other modules? This depends, of course, now on the library vendors. In the case of the HTTP client module, this would fall into the responsibility of Angular itself. When we go to the app routing module, then we actually could say, well, I use the router module for route directly in my Bootstrap application method. There is no need for this ng module here anymore. So I would just replace it with this. Obviously, I need to export the routes then. Export routes. And obviously, I don't want to call the file anymore app routing module, but I just call it app routes like this. All right. Okay, what about the security module? Well, if we take a look at the security module, what does it do? I mean, we can keep it like this, that we say we are more or less encapsulate certain security modules that we require inside of the security module. But I don't want to do this. I'll just copy it over to my Bootstrap application and get rid of it. Yeah. Maybe I should change the order here that we have Nginx in the first place. And the shared module can be deleted, the security module, sorry. Okay, well, and for the rest of the modules, I have to wait until the library vendors done their part, so that they are providing alternatives and not ng modules anymore. Nginx is at the moment already working on it. They have already released a beta version for version 14 that this also provides these functions. By the way, all these functions that I just used, they are called standalone APIs. So these are the new functions that help us to get rid of the critical, important ng modules. There is one last thing, and this is about the routing, about the lazy loading. So if I go to my routes, we see here that also the routing, the lazy loading needs a module. And this is something that can also be done in a different way already. So I go into my holidays module, and the way how this works is I just need to export the routes. As I did before with the app routing module, I just say now, okay, I have here the holiday routes, like this. This is something we keep. Let me quickly make sure that I'm able to close all the parentheses. yes, like this. I keep these two guys as a comment for now. And now I just need to provide the holiday routes instead of a particular module in my routing configuration. So I just say, it's not DSM, I just say holiday routes, that's it. I store it. Yeah, looks good. But now I still have a problem, because the store module and the effects module are very important for me, for the application, because this is where the holidays are loaded. This is NGRX. Question is, I just removed the ng module that is used to import the store and the effects module. What can I do now? And here the good thing is that also the routes got an extension, received an extension. They now also have the possibility to provide services. So I can come up here with providers as well. Maybe I should provide a type for it. Then I have an easier time. All right, let's try it again. Providers, yes, now it's there. And well, how to get an ng module into a providers array, as we did in the Bootstrap application method. I just use import providers from and move these two guys here. Save it. Angular CLI is running. Should work. I go to my holidays and they are there. And if I want to check it, I just make sure the Redux should also work. It doesn't work, because why does it not work? Well, I'm quite sure that I've missed to import the store DevTools module. Right. If you're not using NGRX, it's not a problem. It's not that critical for every application, but I'm sure quite a lot of people are using it, so I thought I'll include it here as well. And it also stands, I think, for a lot of other use cases with other modules that are very interesting here. Well, yes, all of them missed it. So here we see that the Redux DevTools are also picking up my NGRX. And well, that's it more or less. So what I have done now, I have migrated to Angular 14. We have seen that the migration script, they will make sure that your build will not fail. So they will not migrate to typed forms. They will also not migrate to standalone components and also APIs. For the typed forms, you will get the untyped classes. In order to get to the typed forms, you need to replace the untyped classes with the original ones. Be aware that there can be undefined and null types there as well. Then you have seen how I migrated to standalone components. I did it in two phases. First, I used the scan pattern for a preparation, so that it is very easy for me to find out the actual dependencies for every component. And then at the end, I used the standalone APIs, which is the Bootstrap application method, the import providers from method, and also some other additional things that will help us in the future to remove also particular ng modules which are required because they are providing dependencies, services, or something similar. And everything that you have to do now to get rid of the other ng modules, like the one from NGRX, is that you have to wait a little bit until all the vendors of your third-party libraries are providing alternatives, also standalone alternatives more or less. What I missed was that I also did the migration to the page title in the routing configuration, but as you have seen, this was very easy, very intuitive, so this was not something which is very hard, but definitely very useful. Okay, that's it. Well, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I wish you a happy migration. Please plan for a lot of time. For a normal application, you will definitely need it. And, well, thank you very much and see you next time. Goodbye.